When I was still a teenager, I was sexually abused by my brother-in-law, who had married my very favorite sister. This sister was the one who taught me to say my prayers and helped me to learn about Jesus. You see, I grew up in a Christian family. I went to a Christian school, but yet there was something lacking. I know times were very hard, and they were very concerned with the day-to-day struggle to take care of their family. But the spiritual need for me was lacking. I remember I would walk home from school and I would think, oh, I love Jesus so much. I just love him so much. But I'm afraid when I die, he'll say, you aren't worth it. You can't go to heaven. I would think, how could God love me? How could Jesus love me when my mother and father couldn't? And it was a burden that stayed with me for years. I grew up with absolutely no self-esteem. I was victimized from day one. And then this tragic thing happened with my brother-in-law. It went on for a period of 3 years. Now you must remember that during that time, it was unheard of for a woman to go to the authorities and complain, because no matter what the circumstances were in those days, the woman was always guilty. It was a horrible, horrible experience to live through. My one concern was what would happen to my sister. Remember, this was my favorite sister. What would happen if she found out and they had 2 little girls under 3 years old? So I kept quiet. That's all I knew how to do. My abuse ended when my sister and her family moved out of state. At that time, I buried almost everything in my subconscious very deeply. It was about a year after this was over that I met my husband. And before we were married, I told him that my brother-in-law had raped me. But I did not go into the details because I didn't remember the details at that time. And life was going quite well. Then, shortly after New Year's Day, in 1966, I got a phone call. Hello? In 1996, I'm sorry. You see, Norm said something about being nervous. Well, you just found out. Yes, I'm nervous. In 1996, in January, I got a phone call one morning. My favorite sister had died. They lived out of state, and she had died quite suddenly. I hung up the phone, but I couldn't cry. Now this was very unusual for me because by nature I am very emotional. I could not cry. I was perhaps anxious, but I could not cry. About a week later, in the morning, our pastor called and said he and his wife would be over in the afternoon. I put down the phone and I said to dear Ernie, it's all coming back like a waterfall, what my brother-in-law had done to me. It just came flooding back. And I said, don't be surprised if when the pastor is here, I lose it. Well, when the pastor came, I lost it. It was the most horrible experience of my life. All the anger, hurt, humiliation, shame, whatever you want to say, was relived 100-fold. I knew I needed counseling because this was something I could not handle myself. And it was through God's grace, and only God's grace, that I did not hang up the phone. He took full responsibility of the abuse and cried and asked forgiveness. Well, it's one thing to hear from your perpetrator that they were responsible, but to forgive, that's really asking quite a bit. See, we were going to have a very large family function, and I wanted to make sure that he wasn't there because I wanted to go. I think that was what really was my conscious reason for sending him the journals. And he promised me that he would not come near me. A few days later, I was back at the computer, and I wrote him a short letter thanking him for the call. And a strange thing happened. While I was typing away at this letter, this big lump that was right here in my chest that I thought was normal, I could feel it just melt away. It was the strangest thing I ever experienced. And then I realized I could shrug my shoulders. See? I can shrug my shoulders. I couldn't. Now, all that abuse was buried in my subconscious for about 45 years or more. People think sometimes, oh, it doesn't matter, it'll go away. No, it's always there. And sooner or later will come a time when it will come out. Be aware that God loves you, and no matter what, that will never change.